Okay, here we go. This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. I'm going to give you the spiel. I have lots of vehicles for you to buy and or lease at Norman Oak Ridge Ford. Blowouts on 24 models. 25s are coming in. I'm delivering another vehicle to an OG and a convert this week coming up. And man, I cannot wait to hand them the keys, give them a high five, big hug, not just for purchasing a vehicle through Oak Ridge Ford and myself, but supporting the podcast all of these years. It is Sunday, January 19th, 2025, Norman, London, Mike in Buffalo. What a weird week for the Maple Leafs. It starts with them getting booed off the ice after losing 4-1 to Dallas, and then a couple of wild fire wagon type affairs with the Devils and the Habs. The Leafs really are kind of back to their winning ways. 6-3 in the month of January, 7-3 in their past 10. Highlighted by last night's come from behind 7-3 win over the Habs at Centre Bell. It was a sleeper, down 3-0 halfway through the game. Mike, I tuned it out. I was on my way back from my daughter's cheer competition. I thought it was dead and gone. And then 7 unanswered goals from the Maple Leafs. A stalwart effort between the pipes late in the game from one Joseph Woll. And the Leafs go ahead and beat their rivals in Montreal. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Norm. There's always a little bit more of a spring in the Leaf fans' step when they beat the Habs, and especially when the ramp up. It was Hockey Day in Canada. The Habs are the hottest team in the league, and Patrick Laine is unstoppable, and then it's 3-0 after one, and everybody's like, oh boy, let's just turn off this game,
right,
and switch it to Calgary, Winnipeg, or whatever. And they slowly climbed back into the game. And, don't get me wrong. I think, Montreal deserves a lot of credit for, being a lot better than a lot of people thought that they were. Lane Hudson is a leading candidate for the Calder, and, Suzuki and Caulfield are really good players. They're just not a very good overall team. And right now, everybody's been hot. Right. Like Kirby Doc and Alex Newhook and players like that. But, last night, it's like Laine scores on the power play with the big shot. Josh Anderson, who's a complete ghost against every other team in the NHL.
Right.
He's an absolute Leaf killer in the playoffs or in the regular season. He scores a goal. And, it didn't look good, but I give credit without John Tavares in the lineup. The team crawled back and got goals from guys like McMahon and Nick Robertson, tied the game early in the third, and then ran away with it. And the Leafs deserve a lot of credit for that effort.
OG's converts, like the content, subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for being here. It means so much. Plenty of people were part of our last live presentation, and we'd like to see those numbers continue to increase as we go forward. I'm going to unveil the results of our latest Leafs Convo poll in a few minutes, but let's continue to sink our teeth into last night's victory versus the Habs, Mike. Some people are surprised that the Leafs were able to get it together. We've got Dominic S. Thank God the Leafs burst the Montreal bubble. Mm-hmm. It was getting irritating. I mean, ever since blowing a 3-1 lead in the playoffs versus the Habs during those COVID years. I mean, there's a stigma with everything the Leafs do involving the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, I don't know if it's they fully exercised those demons last night, but at the end of the day, they beat an inferior team by coming back and shoving it down their throats in the way that we'd expect the Maple Leafs to do when they're facing adversity, with all of that firepower, even if John Tavares wasn't in the lineup.
Well, I mean, you got to remember, for most of the last few years, while they're in a rebuilding situation, playing Toronto is about as exciting and about as close to a playoff scenario as the Montreal Canadiens have gotten.
Right.
And they won 1-0 the opening night of the season. The Leafs couldn't get a goal past Samuel Montembeault, and that's just, I mean, it just that is the dynamic when it comes to these two teams. Now, they've been playing really well, and the Leafs, up until Thursday night, had lost 3 games in a row and had not played well recently. Right. But they seemed to get things back. And the game against New Jersey was particularly annoying in the sense that every time the Leafs did something good, New Jersey bounced back and took the lead. They took the lead 1-0. The Leafs tied it. They took the lead 2-1. The Leafs tied it. They took the lead 3-2. The Leafs tied. It was like, and then finally the Leafs tied the game, got it to overtime. And after Luke Hughes hits the post, they score on the Nylander breakaway. And Nylander is sort of central in the most recent turnaround, because when he was asked questions about, well, you've only scored 1 goal in the last 11 games and the team has lost 3 in a row, he was sort of nonplussed about it. It's like, yeah, things will work out, we're a good team, and okay,
that's his disposition.
Right. That's why he's sort of, even though I would have traded him, and I think a lot of people would have traded him when it came up to his contract. He has the perfect personality for Toronto because he doesn't have his ear to the rail line. He's sort of, nonplussed about everything. Hey, everything's going to work out. Whereas other players, I think, hear everything said about them, care about everything said about them.
Are you referring to Mitch Marner?
Oh, I don't know who I'm talking about.
Well, don't you? It's funny. I stumbled upon a video on, I don't know, Instagram or something, going back, I don't know how many years, 20 years, when Mitch was 11 years old, and he was dominating in the Toronto leagues, and his dad, it was a CBC story that focused on his fucking father, a guy who needs, more attention like a hole in the head. And it was all about Paul wanting more from his son and making snide. So, we get on Mitch. But man, there's a really toxic relationship that's been fostering and festering for many a year, and I've had my run-ins with Paul. So if you wonder where he gets his petulance from, I mean, he can't escape the old man. And the ironic thing is, it's William Nylander whose father played in the NHL.
Right.
I mean, you'd think that the pressure would be much greater to kind of exceed the level of play that his father was able to produce. It's remarkable. Anyway, I digress.
Well, I mean, the hockey dad story is strewn throughout, the history of this league.
Right.
And, I can't, we know the story, we know the dynamic, we know how it affects certain things. I think it's going to come to a head in the summer when, there is a negotiation of a new contract. And ironically, I wrote an article for the Hockey News regarding the Leafs, and Marner was part of it in terms of how taxes affect in terms of, the salary and some of these players and the offers that teams can make. Say, for example, and Pierre LeBrun reported this last week, that the Leafs have sort of capped what they will offer Marner in the $12.5 to $13 million range, which I think is too much, but okay. Say it's $13 million. The Leafs, because they have the second highest taxes in the NHL so that means what these players can take home, it's over 50%. So Mitch Marner on a $13 million deal per year would get less than I think it's around 6.1 million per year, and that's on an 8-year deal. And so it's about $49 million. Okay, you and I'll take it. But on a 7-year deal, in the other places where he was rumored to go, like Nashville, like Utah, like Vegas, all have significantly lower taxes. Some of them are no tax states in the U.S. On a 7-year deal, he would make more money in all 3 of those places. So what that tells you is that, if he's I need to make the most money, the Leafs would have to pay him more than Austin Matthews for him to get more money on an 8-year deal than he would on a 7-year deal. And if that's the most important thing to Mitch Marner, great. But you know what? You're going to get it someplace else.
Look, I'll ask the OGs and converts this. If you could make more money elsewhere, significantly more money elsewhere than in the place you'd prefer to play, but significantly more money elsewhere on teams that may have just as good a chance to succeed as the one you prefer to play on,
Right.
What would you do? Like, Mike, I mean, like, we're all struggling to earn a buck and keep a buck. We're all taxed all high hell, unless you're in Alberta or, certain places in the United States, and you just mentioned them, Mike. But if you have an 80 million reasons to be somewhere, and you can earn more of those dollars elsewhere, and you're entering your late 20s, early 30s, and who knows, this might be the last massive contract you ever signed.
Yeah.
What the hell would you do?
Well, all I know is this: in Utah, Vegas, or Nashville, he's not getting a sports gambling advertisement deal like he has with Sports Interaction. So I don't know how much he makes on that. Whatever, that's up to Darren Ferris' agent. But if he's making anything on that, and that equals, or that puts him over the top, and he says, I want to play in Toronto, then you should be prepared to take a little less. But do I think that's going to happen? No, I think he's going to go for the bottom dollar, and whether the Leafs pay him or not will depend on what they do in the playoffs. And I don't think anything's getting done during the regular season. I think it's going to go into the summer before July 1st. And if it doesn't work out, then I think they probably end up trading his rights before the draft and getting something back, and he signs someplace else on an 8-year deal. But that's basically or it's a sign and trade type of situation. So
there was no intent to go on a Marner tangent today, and we're not upset with the guy. He's having a whale of a season, top 5 and scoring 62 plus points. He's up there with McKinnon and McDavid, and I don't see any signs of it. Yeah, Draisaitl, I don't see any signs of it slowing down. When you look at the career numbers for McKinnon, Draisaitl, McDavid, like, these guys are legit. So Marner's playing at that level right now, and if it's coincidental, if it's just good timing, all the power to him. What would you guys do? And again, the numbers aren't, they're reflective of what he's done over his career. It's the playoffs that have been a major problem for him, and by extension his teammates. And that remains to be seen if he can exercise those demons. Timberwolf, an OG. Morning, boys. Leafs are finally taking over games as they should be. Last two prove Willie Styles was right. It is no big deal. Well, it's always a big deal in Leafland, Mike, is it not?
As long as you put your money where your mouth is, and that's what he did. I mean, he basically said it. Yeah, like he said, no big deal. And okay, and then he showed up and scored 3 goals, scored the game winner against New Jersey, and scored the game tying goal against Montreal. You're paying him $11.5 million. You expect that guy to show up. Now, do you expect him to disappear for over 10% of the season? Well, he scored 1 goal in 11 games, and that was in a game where he had 3 breakaways and finally broke through. I mean, yeah, you expect the guys who are making the big money to produce. And when they do, you say, okay, well, that's what they're supposed to do. And if they don't, then you say, okay, this team can't win if they don't carry the ball. And Matthews has scored the last 2 games. Nylander has scored the last 2 games. They've won both games. It's not rocket science.
3 power play goals in their last 2 games too, and that's always encouraging. Josh DiSavino, hi, gents. I'm wondering what you believe Berube wants to see from this team in an ideal world. I mean, he wants a defensive structure that he can rely on night in and night out. And Mike, Joseph Woll last night proved in the last few minutes of that game against the Habs why he is of #1 caliber. Like, he was all over the fucking place. It gave me goosebumps. Just like, that's a goaltender who senses the occasion. We were down 3-0. We stole victory from the jaws of defeat. I have to do whatever it takes to maintain this result. It was phenomenal last night. So, do you think Berube is beginning to kind of unfurl the runway for Joseph Woll to truly take off on and become that #1 that you want to see him become?
I don't know, because there was chatter that Dennis Hildeby was going to start on Saturday because he had played against New Jersey on Thursday and didn't, I didn't think he played badly against New Jersey, but there were, goals that people I know who were complaining and says, oh, he can't ever make the big save. Well,
it was 3 goals against though, Mike.
I know, but in with the Leafs playing sort of a low scoring type of defensively responsible game, 3 goals can be a loss. And now he against New Jersey, one goal I thought was, completely Connor Timmins' fault and he did the same thing last night where it's like on a power play. If you're going to be on a power play and you're supposed to be blocking a shot, then you block the shot. You don't screen the goalie, and he screened the goalie on Line A's goal, and I think it was Heishier against New Jersey. But last night, even though I thought, Woll was okay against New Jersey, he was phenomenal against Montreal. He kept them in the game.
Right.
Even they scored that early goal, and he made a bunch of good big saves in the first period. Then Montreal gets those 2 goals late in the first, and you think maybe they pull him, maybe whatever. No, they kept him in there, and he kept it at 3-0. And he allowed the Leafs to crawl back. And then in the third period, he made, I think, 4 or 5 unbelievable saves, including that one, the diving one. I think that's what Woll is capable of. But what I think with Berube, you see that Stolarz is starting to come back, starting to work his way. Probably in a couple weeks, he'll be ready to play. I personally would wait until after the Four Nations to bring him back, which I think it's February 8th. Right. There's no need to rush him back. You need him 100% healthy.
Right.
I think that the plan here with the Leafs is to split the duty between Woll and Stolarz. But I think the only way that the Leafs win in the playoffs is if they choose one goalie. And if it's one goalie, I don't think it can be Stolarz because he's had a history of injury issues. We know Woll has, but Woll, they need to find out whether Woll can be that guy.
Joseph Woll is not keeping the seat warm for Anthony Stolarz.
I would hope that's the case, but you listen to the chatter and basically you see that Stolarz had a .920 save percentage and was playing out of his mind, and he could be one of the goalies for Team USA at the Four Nations. It's like, okay, right. let's chill the hyperbole here. He's a good goaltender. He cannot be their number one. He cannot stay healthy. He's never done it in his career. Now, whether Joseph Woll can stay healthy, that's up. He hasn't been able to before. He's 26 years old. Right. You need to determine whether he can be the number one guy. And if he plays like he did against the Islanders earlier this month, or if he played the way he did against Montreal, then I think he is a number one goalie.
He looked healthy and confident last night. I think it was Craig Simpson compared Woll to Grant Fuhrer 40-plus years ago. Fuhrer would give up 6 goals in the first period, but wouldn't give up the 7th. I mean, basically, that's how you generate a reputation for being there when it counts. The Leafs could have easily folded up the tent last night, right? And the goaltender included. I mean, that could have been a 5-0 game. The Leafs chipped back a couple of goals. They've lost 3 of 4. Another one to Montreal. In Montreal, it's like their Stanley Cup. But no, right? The game wasn't over. And that's the testament to a goaltender who's got your back and can batten down the hatches regardless of how many they've given up. The Leafs have the offense to win any game at any time, and we know this, right? They were down 3-0, Mike. That is an insurmountable lead to overcome for a lot of teams. Not the Leafs. Now, it did help that they were playing against the Habs, but that is a big deal in and of itself. You were able to take advantage of a team that just was not confident enough to put you away. You had a goaltender who reset himself and didn't give up a goal over the last 2 periods. I try to tell my son when he's pitching, because I'm a pitching coach, is win the inning, right? You give up 4 or 5 runs in the first inning. It was a little bit of a rocky start. Go out in the second and win the inning, right? And then win the third and then win the fourth. Joseph Woll helped the Leafs win the last 2 periods of that game. And for all of their warts and all of the things that we feel that they're still deficient at, the team has, played at a pretty damn good clip this season. First place in the division, battling with Florida, setting up what's probably going to be a battle in the playoffs. And all in all, it's been a pretty successful season. Simon Murray, Willie does not feel the pressure. Game 7, OT, breakaway, and he's as cool as a cucumber clutch. I give William Nylander and his team a lot of credit, regardless of how things go for him. Man, that laissez-faire attitude and that, cool as the cucumber approach, he's Teflon, man. He's Teflon. By contrast, Mitch Marner and his relationship with the team and team's fans and media, et cetera, is completely different. And both of these guys are going to be integral to whatever the Maple Leafs want to accomplish here in the next several months to come. Milan Tomasevic, what do you mean you had run-ins with Paul? Well, I covered the Knights for many, many years, and Mitch Marner was, high draft pick, and then led the team to
a Memorial
Cup. And I knew him pretty well. We covered him. I had a great relationship with him. But the way we covered him was never good enough for his father. With that chip on his shoulder, there was always this feeling that we were undercutting Mitch. And Mike, you were implicated in this and to some degree, in that you and I were talking about how we didn't feel Mitch should have made the Maple Leafs after he was drafted. He better off going back to the OHL, just right, based on numbers and all of the other rookies who were trying to find their way at the time, and not believing that it would have made a lot of sense. Well, I mean, he did play for the Leafs and did do pretty well, and Paul took offense to what we thought would have been a better year for Mitch in London as opposed to Toronto, and kind of misconstrued our belief in how we thought he should be developed, and took offense to it, believing that we disliked his son and were against him, when all of the coverage leading up to that point would be contrary to his philosophy that the world doesn't want to see his son succeed.
Well, that's nice, but the thing is, if you to go back in the time machine here, had Mitch Marner played for the Leafs in that year after being drafted 4th overall, they probably would not have been able to draft Austin Matthews, because I'm sure with his talent, he could have been successful at 18 or 19 years old in the NHL. But had he done that, they would have won more games. That would have decreased their chances of finishing dead last, which they were intent on. P.A. Parento was their leading goal scorer that year. They were tanking. They were tanking for Austin Matthews. They only brought up William Nylander at the end of the year, and Zach Hyman and Connor Brown and all those guys that played for the Marlies. They did not want Mitch Marner. It was better for Mitch Marner to develop and play in London, but it was also beneficial to the team to have a skeleton crew in the NHL and finish dead last. And I think they only finished dead last by 1 point or 2 points. So they needed every loss they could get to get Austin Matthews. And in the end, Austin Matthews was just as important or more important to the long-term future of the Maple Leafs than Mitch Marner has been.
Yeah, it's okay to play with a chip on your shoulder, but as time goes on and you move your career forward and accomplish things, I mean, you have to fill that chip in, right? I mean, there's no reason to have any animosity towards anyone right now. Mitch has had it pretty damn good. He's put together a awesome career to this point, and I'm sure it's only going to get better. I mean, fucking grow up, for God's sakes.
But here's the interesting thing, and we can sort of extrapolate on this for the second half of the show. I think we've seen examples right now over the last, say, 3-4 weeks of the soft points of the Maple Leafs. Right. One, when Austin Matthews was out, John Tavares stepped up and took on the number 1 center role. But there's generally accepted a weakness up the middle or a lack of depth up the middle if one of Tavares or Matthews is out. Now it's the flip-flop where Matthews is healthy and John Tavares got injured in practice this week. And although they're saying it's not serious, it's going to be at least a week, maybe a couple weeks until he gets back. Okay, so you can't depend on, anything can happen in the playoffs. You have to have depth. But we've also seen what the Leafs defense would be without one of their better defensemen. Whereas, Jake McCabe was out for a little over a week and with a concussion, and how the pairings were all messed up, and how there's a genuine lack of depth on the blue line. What is the bigger need? I continue to say it's center, but I think you would also say that they probably need to add another depth defenseman, not a top four. I think they can get away with OEL, McCabe, Tanev, and Riley as your top four. If you could go out and get a number one defenseman, fine, but those guys don't grow on trees. So the likelihood of somebody filling in a top pairing role is almost nil. But can they go out and get a David Savard, or is that the reason why they were in on John Klingberg, who now has a clean bill of health after having hip resurfacing? They were in on Klingberg because I think it was a free swing. It was one of these deals where you go out, you sign somebody. If it doesn't work out, you put them on IR and you call it a day.
Right.
And he ended up going to Edmonton, but I think that is going to be the debate, and that's probably the internal debate that's going on with Brad Treliving and the hierarchy of the Leafs in terms of what do we use our draft capital and our prospects on when it comes to at the deadline in adding that one player that can help us. And I'm continuing to believe it's going to be a center rather than a defenseman.
This is the Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. See me for your next vehicle at Norm at Oak Ridge Ford. I'm handing keys over to a podcast supporter this coming week. That's 2 straight months. Thank you very much for all of your support. Like the content, guys. Subscribe to the channel. Watch out for our Leafs Convo shorts. They'll be coming over the next several days. I'm going to go through our latest Leafs Convo poll here in a few minutes. So a depth defenseman and more help at center. Coincidentally, Steven Lorentz and Bobby McMahon scoring goals last night. If you can get goals from the rest of the crew, that helps. And if you're going to score 7 of them in a game, you'd expect guys like David Kampf to chip in. Nick Robertson with a goal, and OEL with a big night last night, which was nice to see. A blue liner pick up points. But hey, when you're against the Habs and they're falling back a little bit and they've lost their confidence, all bets are off. It turns into a high scoring affair, and it's good that everybody gets to chip in those circumstances. But Mike, look, the Leafs have done really well this season, but every team that aspires to be even better than they are and reach the promised land is a continual work in progress. Now, just looking at the teams plus minus, that's a big indicator for me. The goals are going up. 7 goals last night does help in the goals for, but the goals against have started to go up too. And, a team that was once top 5 in goals against is now mid-pack in the league. And it's not just about the goaltending. It's about that defensive mindset. And as some of the guys who are longer in the tooth, who are really responsible back there, continue on in the season. You're going to see the not necessarily the effort wane, but the ability to stay tip top road, right? Because it's only natural. That's where the support has to come in. So Brad Treliving's got his work cut out for him to make a really, really good team even better. I don't want to go on for too much longer, Mike. A few more points and we'll get out of here.
Yeah, it's a challenge for Treliving before the deadline. I do think that there's been some reason for doubt over the last few weeks because there's been sort of a dip in the play of this team. I don't think they've been as consistent as they were throughout October, November, and early to mid-December. I think they dropped off a little bit around Christmas time, and they've won 2 games in a row. So then it's an 82-game schedule, so we know that there are peaks and valleys. But I think you're looking at this team and just seeing. I've said this all along. I don't think Max Domi is a center. I think Max Domi is better as a winger, but they've been forced to use him up the middle. And I think ideally when it comes to the playoffs, he's better as a playmaking winger playing with Austin Matthews if they decide to spread out their offense among 3 lines. I think he's a better fit there than he is as a 3rd line center. So, if they can go out and find themselves a good 2-way checking center with a little bit of an offensive upside, somebody like a Yanni Gourde, although Yanni Gourde is not exactly, I know he had been injured and he's not scoring the way he did when he was in Tampa, but I do think depth up the middle. If you're forced to play David Kampf or Pontus Holmberg in a 3rd line center role or rely on a rookie like Fraser Minton, I mean, you're sort of asking for trouble. This is, not to say that, they're not capable, but if your aim is to win a Stanley Cup, I don't think that that's sufficient. So that's the challenge in front of Brad for a living, is to be able to gauge the market and find the best deal and bring in a player who could help this team get to the next step.
And there's no guarantee that Treliving's able or capable of replacing the players we believe need to be maneuvered with tried, tested, and true stalwarts who will arrive and kick this team across the goal line for the first time in many a year. I mean, that's the thing. Just looking in the chat, and impressions are in the eye of the beholder here. Mitch Marner has almost 20 more points than William Nylander. Okay, Edward Lee. Marner is an assist-heavy Adam Oates type. Jason Sparks, Marner elite talent, doesn't have elite will. And Michael Matthew. Willie is worth the price of admission. He is explosive when ready. It's remarkable how we see these players so differently.
Well, they're different type of players. We know that Nylander.
But I'm not talking about how they're producing. It's just Nylander could go scoreless in 10 games, and Michael Matthew would say the same thing he just said.
Right. I mean, everybody has their prejudices. Everybody's got their favorites, and they're a believer in the type of player that those players are. I mean, the ironic thing is there has been a level of consistency over the last couple of years that Nylander did not have earlier in his career. But again, I said, during this 11-game stretch, there was a lot of Mr. Willie showing up again. It was like, we hadn't seen that a lot over the last 2 years. Like I said, everybody has peaks and valleys, but 11 games where he seemed to be out of it. He seemed to be like not.
Fans don't care, Mike. He's just so damn likable. On the flip side, Marner, it's a love-hate with that guy, right? I mean,
I see. I think fans do care about it. I think fans, like, if there's not a level of consistency and performance when it comes to somebody like William Nylander, I mean, if he's sort of like laissez-faire and just sort of like, I'm just going through the motions and he's not producing, then people are going to get on him. Mitch Marner is, I think, more enigmatic. I think he's more not as media friendly. I think he's a lot more uptight when it comes to the media, but he's a great player. It's just he needs to be a great player when it counts.
Right.
And if he is, then I think everybody will forgive him his foibles. And if he doesn't, then I think people will have the knives out for him.
Yeah, it's amazing how we view these guys, right? I mean, they've came in together, or relatively close together, been on these teams. They've succeeded together. They've failed together. One statistically is greater than the other, but we have our biases, and that's the beauty of being a fan. You can view things in your own through your own prism, right? At the end of the day, I'd like to see both of these players succeed in the playoffs, go on a deep run, and then beyond that, we shall see how the impressions evolve for the better or for the negative. Only time will tell. Francisco Pinto, McMahon had a good game. Yes. 13 goals for Bobby McMahon. He's outside shot for 25. Like that's the kind of production we need from guys who play in those type of roles. I mean, no complaints with Bobby McMahon, and considering where his career was, right? I mean, this guy could be working at Costco right now. Instead, I mean, he's doing yeoman's work for a team that needs that kind of work from a player in his position.
I mean, with McMahon, as has been the case with a lot of Leaf players, it was not ability, it was availability.
Right.
He had a number of injuries playing with the Marlies. I mean, he had a 20-goal plus season with the Marlies, and then I think it was in like 45 games or something like that because he got injured a couple times. He's a big body player. He seems to have, knock on wood, avoided the injury issues. He's showed a level of consistency similar to Matthew Nyes, but Matthew Nyes is 22, 23 years old, and Bobby McMahon, I believe, is 28. So he should sort of be past the inconsistency. And yes, he's played well, and he's on a 20-goal pace, and so is Nyes. And this team needs those players to produce like that as secondary offense for when Matthews, Marner, and Nylander and Tavares don't perform, or don't get those goals. So yeah, that's necessary, and they're going to need a couple more players to sort of step up when it comes to down the stretch and in the playoffs.
A lot of shout outs for Joseph Woll. Chris Daniels, that Woll performance was out of this world. I will always remember that stick save, and endearing himself to the fans, Mike, right? And not because we have sympathy for him due to long stretches of not being able to play. It's making plays like that in big moments on the big stage. Hey, if Joseph Woll stays healthy and can become a true bona fide number one, I am here for it, my friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They have not had a consistent performer in goal since Eddie Belfour.
Right.
I mean, you're talking going down the, Andrew Raycroft, the monster, Jonas Gustafsson, J.S. Shiger, Jonathan Bernier, Vesa Toskala, James Reimer, keep going. It's like, Freddie Anderson, you could make a case, but they never won a playoff series with him. He was great during the regular season and played a bunch of games. But in terms of consistency, when it counted, they have not had a solid, consistent goalie performer since Eddie Belfour. And when that quarter century team came out a couple weeks ago, that means 2000 to 2025. Who were the two goalies? Mm-hmm. Cujo, who played 2 years at the beginning of the century, and Eddie Belfour. None of the other goalies that I mentioned were in the mix. That tells you something when you have a 20-year gap, and the goalies that have been from 2004 on forward are not on that list.
Well, those goaltenders had reputation and pedigree and accolades, and they came to Toronto and they produced. In Joseph's circumstance, it wasn't as long as we wanted because he did move on to Detroit, but Eddie Belfour came in and backstop a team that was already really well composed and comprised and put together. And we still think of those teams in high regard, even though they really didn't get far in the grand scheme of things. Joseph Woll is burgeoning and blossoming right before our eyes. The key will be health and certainly support. Guys, thanks so much for all the comments. If there was something that we missed, do me a favor, copy and paste it under the content on YouTube. This show will live in infamy forever on YouTube in a matter of minutes. We want to see more comments and more lively discussion under that post on YouTube. Thanks so much for your contributions during the live chat, but don't forget the post component to our content on YouTube. Speaking of, our Leafs Convo poll 4 days ago, would you have booed the Leafs off the ice after that loss to Dallas? Again, not to finish with anything negative. 130 votes, Mike, 75% said yes, they would have. I mean, you pay the big bucks, you don't like what you see. Even in a microcosm, let them have it. Don't you agree?
That's what fans pay. They pay their money, and as long as they're not being derogatory to people in the stands or yelling epithets at the players on the ice, a boo that's you paid. You have the right to do that.
Did Marner make a comment after this?
I don't know.
I don't recall if he would have got upset about it. Okay, well the Chiefs are through. I thought they would have handled the Texans a little bit better, but the Chiefs are the Chiefs, and I'm ready for them to die. Not because I dislike Travis Kelce or Pat Mahomes or any of those guys. They've just been around so long. They've got so much success.
Oh, I just like them. But I mean, I'll just say this. I never had much time for Bill Belichick, but on the Manning cast yesterday, when they panned up to the press box and showed Taylor Swift, high-fiving with Caitlin Clark, and there was an audible groan out of the voice of Bill Belichick, that's the most I've ever liked Bill Belichick. I'm sick and tired of this, just like, I mean, concentrate.
This is an NFL thing. They are leeching off the success and the popularity of the biggest star in the world.
Yes.
It's the biggest league in the world, the biggest star in the world. It's not a synergy. It's just Taylor Swift knows that she's being watched by going to these games, and the NFL is excited about that because all that's doing is opening up more opportunities for money to be made with fans who aren't people who aren't traditionally football fans.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, don't you see why a league that is known for promoting itself would take advantage of this in every way possible? And you think, though, when the Chiefs die off, or when the Chiefs go through a rebuild, they're not as good. The impact of Taylor Swift's connection to the team and the players will lessen. So they're running with it.
Yes.
Right? I mean, that's the NFL in a nutshell.
Yeah, but yes, I would root for Satan over the Kansas City Chiefs.
Just real quick, Commanders 45-31 over the Lions. It was such a big year for the Lions, ranked #1. Dan Campbell, everybody loves that guy. I kind of felt like it had to happen, right?
Well, I think you could see the signs of it because they had all their injuries on the defensive side. They lost Hutchinson. They lost a bunch of their key defensive players, and in a wide open offensive game, it's a flip of the coin. And I like I said, I have sympathy for the Lions because like they've never done anything for me, done anything against me. They sort of are like the NFC version of the Bills in terms of the fact that they haven't won anything. So I would have liked to have seen the Bills and the Lions, and plus I think the Lions may have had the best chance to potentially beat the Chiefs if the Chiefs go. Now it's probably Philadelphia. Right. If it's Kansas City against LA or Washington, then we're going to get sick and tired of seeing Kelsey and Mahomes on these stupid State Farm commercials.
Look, the Rams 10-7 at Philadelphia. I mean, Saquon Barkley is just the best of the best, and Jalen Hurts does what he does. Is there any chance for the Rams to upset the Eagles at home?
Sure, I think they have a puncher's chance. I mean, they've won a Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford at quarterback, so
yeah.
I mean, it's a cold weather game, and it's a team that plays in a dome, so that's definitely something in Philadelphia's favor. But Philadelphia kept Green Bay in the game last week. So do I think they're going to run away with it? No, but I think they should win it.
Right. And the Ravens are unbelievable. You think Lamar Jackson's going to win MVP based on all of the accolades he's been able to achieve so far this season, leading up to the big one. Come on, Bills are at home. It's a different. You don't think so? That environment.
The environment may mean something, but the fact that the Bills have had trouble stopping the run all year, and you've got 5 300-plus pound linemen, a 300-pound fullback, and Derrick Henry, who's a beast, and that's not even taking into consideration Lamar Jackson. I mean, I think the Bills could win a shootout, but I don't know how they stop the Ravens. So my heart is with the Bills. My head is with the Ravens.
So I guess if it's a running game in cold weather, that's better, is it not? Right? Because it's supposed to be -6 to -10 Celsius.
Yeah, but it's the conditions. It's whether it's slippery. I mean, if it's, they'll have the field covered until like a couple hours before the game. But if it gets slippery, Derrick Henry could have problems keeping upright, and that would limit the mobility of Lamar Jackson if the conditions are right. So something like that could factor in. But like I said, all things being equal, I think it's going to be the Ravens.
Knowing you, Mike, you're going to pick the Ravens just to protect your emotions, right? You've been disappointed so many damn times as a Maple Leaf fan and as a Bills fan. So why would you go out on a limb and say that your favorite teams are going to win anything, right? You're setting yourself for even greater heartbreak, right?
I'm protecting.
Neither one of these teams is invincible. I'm hoping for the Bills. I really don't know which way I'd put any money. Mike, thanks so much for your time today. We really do appreciate it. where can we catch up with you outside of the Leafs Convo?
We'll be writing some more Leaf stuff for the Hockey News on the main site, and we will have an announcement fairly soon about Leaf coverage going forward, but I'm just saying stay tuned.
Well, that's awesome, and I hope that we can align in any which way, shape, or form that is beneficial to you as the days, weeks, and months progress, and we get to major milestones in the season for the Maple Leafs and beyond. Mr. A, thank you so much. We do appreciate it. We're looking forward to the Leafs and Bolts at Scotiabank Arena in the next 48 hours or so. And then beyond that, maybe we slide in a sneak show before the next Sunday Spectacular. Okay with you?
Yes.
Michael Matthew, thank you, buddy. Great show, everyone. For Mr. Augello, I'm Norm James. The Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford is out of here.